Hi, everyone. It's the third week. This week we are focusing on the brain. This is more of the biology part of this course, or at least as deep as I'm ever going to get into biology for the class. So a little more technical, so there's a lot of information for you to watch in here. The first is a 10-minute video, The Brain Explained, which is really a simplified way to remember the brain. And then there are three more things to watch. One is a tutorial of all the different parts of the brain. Another one is a TED Talk about the work being done to map the brain. And then there's a video that it's a little bit older, but I love it. It's from Scientific American, I think, a little show that Alan Alda used to do, if any of you remember who he is. But it's one about, it's called Severed Corpus Callosum, what happens when you separate the callosum. Very interesting, and that is something that is done. I've even had a child in our work at Head Start that had to have that done because of seizures. So if they separate the callosum, then the corpus callosum, there's not that misfiring going on from one hemisphere to the other. So sometimes it has to be separated. And yes, you can live just fine like that, but it's interesting how cognition is a little different because of that, and language is different, and you'll see that in that film. So I think that one's pretty fascinating. Then I've included my notes on sensations and receptors, because that's an important part of the work the brain has to do. It has to take in information first, that's sensation, and then receptors pick that up, and then we have perception. So a lot of information about that, mostly vocabulary that you'll get out of my notes. And then I'm going to have you do a reflection on what you learned about the brain. And always in these reflections, by the way, keep it on topic and just come up with three things that are new and different, or at least, even if they're not new to you, they're the things that interest you, and write about those. And then there'll be a TED Talk on deaf culture. And I think that's a really important thing to gain some understanding in. You might see deafness as a disability, but for the deaf, that's just a whole culture, a whole different language, a whole different way of perceiving things. And so it's kind of interesting to hear that point of view. And then you'll go to discussions and talk about whether or not you think parents, should have to do cochlear implants if they have a deaf child, or, if they should keep to their deaf culture. So some interesting things to talk about. Then this week I've also included at the end of the module, there's a partial list of mental illnesses, disorders from the DSM. To get you ready and thinking about your research paper you'll write for this class, you'll need to, have an idea of what you're going to write it on. So just begin thinking about that. And like I said, that's just a partial list. Just keep in mind anything you decide to write on must be found in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual for Diagnosing Mental Illness. And that list that I've included at the end of this module, those are all in the DSM, so you'd be fine with any of those. All right, everyone, have a great week, and I'll see you next week.